I'm going to guess if you went to school at the time that I did or before, you would be able to answer this question. What is probably the most famous poem written by Robert Frost? Most quoted. Anybody know? The Road Not Taken? How many of you know that one? The Road Not Taken. I don't know if they learned poetry in school today. I forgot to ask the servers if they memorized this, but it's one of those poems that probably most of us had to memorize, and we kind of know the beginning line and the ending line, and we don't really remember anything that came in between. And the beginning line was this: two roads diverged in a yellow wood. Yada, 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 yada. The bottom line, I took the one less traveled by. And that has made all the difference. Very familiar lines for us. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood. I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. Well, if you know that poem or not, at least take that sentiment to the gospel today. So I think the two can be in dialogue with one another very well. As I think in the gospel today, we're presented with some different choices of roads to go down. And those choices, of course, probably have some questions attached to that. And the road choice number one, the question I'd like to pose to you is this: how do you approach God? How do you approach God in your prayer? How do you do that? I think there's two choices. We once again today meet Mr. and Mrs. Zebedee's boys, James and John. They're familiar to us. And we hear James and John go up to the Lord and say, "We want you to do whatever we ask of you." Isn't that nice? We want you to do whatever it is we ask of you. Sounds a little demanding, doesn't it, huh? A little arrogant, probably. And probably the forerunner of what we call today the age of entitlement. We want you to do for us whatever it is we ask of you. Is that sometimes the way we approach the Lord? In that spirit of demanding something or entitlement? It's a common road for many. And of course, there's the road that sometimes is less traveled. And that road is the road of humility. Confident humility. Confident humility meaning we have confidence that God is always with us and the Lord will never abandon us. We have to have confidence in that. Confidence that no matter what we ask of the Lord, He certainly is going to hear us. But humility. The words of the opening prayer today. Words of humility. That our will conform to the will of God. The prayer that you probably offer every day, I'm going to hope, and probably multiple times a day, I'm sure. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. That road less traveled, that road of complete humility. How is it that you approach God in prayer? Another road choice in the readings today, the question: how do we react or respond to others? How do we react and respond to others? I asked that very question on Thursday at 8 o'clock, the school mass. The readings that day lended it itself, and so do today's. How is it that we react and respond to others? And I posed the question to the kids at mass. I said, suppose you know you did something wrong, or suppose that you didn't know you did something wrong, but either way it was brought to your attention, you were caught and being corrected. I asked them, how would you respond to that? It took maybe about 20 answers. And some of the usual answers were there. One said I would ask forgiveness and hope for the best. Not a bad plan. Not a bad plan. Another one said, I would lie. Said, well, I thank you for your honesty right now. And probably the best answer was this. When I realized what was going on, I would run as fast as I could. Another honest answer that you probably can't fight with. How is it that you respond and react to others? Well, we see two roads in the readings today. The other apostles, the other 10, what was their response to James and John's request? They grew indignant. That's what we hear. They grew indignant. We can almost imagine the conversation among the other 10 as they're listening to this. Like, do the 10 of us not exist? Do they not see us? You can almost imagine, what makes the two of those guys better than the 10 of us, Maybe one of them said, did you forget this whole, Peter, you're the rock upon which I'm building the church? Did we kind of forget that part of the conversation? They grew indignant. It's a road often traveled, isn't it? When we're confronted, or we react, we respond. Sometimes it's in a similar fashion. We grow indignant, we grow angry. But what's that road less traveled? Well, to be open to meet someone where they're at. It's the road often less traveled. It's the harder road to really meet someone where they're at and try to assess if they're willing to meet us and work together. Isn't that the real key to success of Pope Francis? I think one of the hallmarks of his pontificate is he meets everyone right where they are, and he calls them to more, just as Jesus did. He always met everyone exactly where they were, but he didn't leave them there. He always called them to something more. How is it that we react and we respond to others? Is it that indignance, anger, or meeting them where they're at and calling them to more? Another road choice that we're given, question for that one, what is your intention when you follow the Lord? Now, I'm going to assume all of us have decided to follow the Lord. You wouldn't be here at Mass if you didn't. So I think it's a pretty good assumption on my part. We've all chosen to follow God. So what is the intention behind following the Lord? Well, we see that in the gospel today for James and John. What was their intention? They wanted to be number one. Put us one at your right, one at your left. We want to be in charge. We want to be first prime. Sometimes aren't we the same way? When we choose to follow the Lord, we think that everything's going to be so easy. Or if we choose to become involved in parish life or some area of service, we're going to be in charge and everyone better listen. We want to grow to be number one pretty quick. But there's a road less traveled, and Jesus opens that road for the apostles today. What's that road less traveled? Serve others. If you really want to be the leader, serve the needs of the least among you. That other road, the road less traveled often. I learned that very early in my formation as a seminarian. My first summer assignment, and some of you perhaps have heard me tell this story, but my first summer assignment was at St. John Canty's Parish on Broadway in Swinburne on the east side of Buffalo. It's a tough neighborhood. Tough neighborhood then, 30 years ago, tough neighborhood now. And that summer, one of the jobs I had every day was to work at the soup kitchen. We ran a soup kitchen, fed about 300 people dinner every day. And in the beginning, I didn't like going down there. It wasn't, what I was so used to. But it grew on me, and it became kind of an easy part of the day because, for the most part, I was in the kitchen peeling potatoes, washing trays or pots or pans. It was a pretty easy thing. And one day, the pastor, Monsignor Golumbek, came up to me as I was doing my work, and he said, "Follow me, kid." And I did. And he put a tray in my hand, and he said, "Go in the food line and get a meal." And he did the same. And after our plates were ready, and we were at the end of the food line. He said, now I want you to go and find someone and listen to them. He said, we are all very well aware you know how to talk. He said listen, listen to them. And I remember finding this young man, I would say he was about early 30s, and I sat and I listened to him. And as I listened to him, I learned that he had a master's degree. And I learned that at one time he was married. And I learned that he had children. And then I learned about all the circumstances of his life that led him to be where he was at that moment. And as I listened to him, he taught me a very valuable lesson that, as the poem would say, has made all the difference. He really taught me that day the very delicate balance of life. And he taught me that no matter how good things are, life is in a very delicate balance, and it can change at any time. And taught me, too, that those that we served there, perhaps we have preconceived notions, and we fail to realize their real lived lives. Which road do you choose? That of a prime position, or to serve others? You know, that gospel reminds us of baptism. Jesus said, to have you sit at my right or my left, not mine to give. That's for who the Father is determined belongs there. But I'll ask you this question. He said, are you willing to be baptized in the same baptism as me? Are you willing to drink the same cup that I'm willing to drink? And they said, yes, we are. Well, that was an important answer, because for these two brothers, one of them was the first to die a martyr after Jesus. And for the other brother was the last of all the apostles to die after a long life in Ephesus, teaching and preaching around the year 105. That baptism, that drinking of the cup, meant something different for both of them. What does that mean for us today? Basically, it means the invitation to take that road less traveled. It's basically what it may mean. And really how we take that road less traveled is we live our given vocation. I've met many single people. This year I've celebrated many weddings. And single people as a vocation are called to live a generous and chaste life. It's the road less chosen often. And a couple couples whose weddings I've had this year made a very clear point to tell me that they did live a very chaste life right up to the time that they were getting married. And they said it wasn't easy. Said, but we know that our marriage vows today mean so much more because we did. It's made all the difference. I've met many married couples in my life, and have many friends who are married and families. And this past week, one of our own parishioners passed away, a woman who has been sick for 18 years. And for 18 years, her husband took care of her in their home. Their living room looked like a hospital room. And basically, she was almost really in a coma state, eyes always closed, could not move. For 18 years, 7 days a week, 52 weeks a year, he was at her side and took care of every single detail of her life. I think he took the road less traveled. And what a blessed man he is for having lived so faithfully his vows of marriage. And I hope and pray he knows how much all of that meant to his wife, even though she wasn't able to speak to him any longer. Those of us who are ordained or religious life, and those in consecrated vows. You know, when we begin upon our ministry, we have great ideals. And no matter what assignment we go to, if it's a parish or other ministry, you know, we go there to mold and craft all of you into our own image and likeness. No, I mean the image and likeness of God. You know. And along the way, we meet the modern Pharisees who question and challenge every last single thing that we do. And it's a challenge at times to live that life of priesthood or in vows of religious life. And this past week, I met that challenge once again. Thursday was not a good day. Just was. How many of you have had just a bad day? Right? We've all had them. Thursday was a bad day. And around noontime, I called one of my priest friends and I said, I don't know what you're doing. I don't really care what you're doing. We're meeting at the Eagle House for lunch now. And had to talk for a while. And on the way out, after, venting, a lady came up to me. She said, "You're Father Bernat, aren't you?" And I said, "Oh, God, please, not more. I can't deal with it today." And, when you need it the most, there's the Lord. She said, "I got to tell you, you've never met me, but I think you're one of my favorite priests because you just tell it like it is." And she went on to talk for a while. And I said, well, there's the hand of the Lord today. That road less traveled to live that life for the gospel. So what does all that mean today? Today we look at our baptism, we look at drinking the cup, and we look at what does it really mean. It means to take the road less traveled. It means to follow the words of Paul where he said, in my life I make up for what's lacking in the suffering of Christ, which basically means in our lives we continue to be willing to suffer in the name of Christ and his gospel. Simple question is, what road will you choose?